So scope is what determines the accessibility of variables. What that means in plain English is that scope refers to the section of the code where you can access a variable. Can you only access it within one function, or can you access it throughout the entire program? Now, you might be wondering why programmers don't just have all the variables available throughout the entire program. The answer is that if they keep all of the variables constantly accessible, it could bog down the computer's memory. This was important in the early days of computing. Now it still matters because you still don't want to waste memory. Now, there's two kinds of scope inside of Python. There's local and there's global. I have here a function with a variable. So I've made it right here, x equals 5, but it's created inside my function. That makes it a local variable, so I can use it inside my function. But I can't use it outside my function. So what's going to happen is when I run my function, it's going to come up here and say, oh yeah, that's good enough. Yep, x equals 5, that's true. It'll print x. And that part would work, but it's going to throw an error because of this part. Because this variable, x, doesn't exist outside this function. It makes it just inside the one function and not outside. That's what makes it local. So I run it. Oh no, x is not defined. If I comment this out, now it's going to print the 5. See, down here, 5. Yeah, now it works. But if I put it back in, this is where the error exists. And it's because this is a local variable. It's only available inside this function. Now, it's not as important now as it used to be. Once upon a time, the memory in the computer was so expensive and so limited that you needed all your variables to be local variables as much as you could because you didn't want them running all the time. Now that's not as big a concern, but imagine you're making like a game for your PlayStation 5. You don't want a bunch of local variables bogging everything down. If you only need it for a little bit, only create it for a little bit. So here's the contrast. This is a global variable. So what makes it global? It's set up outside the function. So now it's available wherever it comes. So when I run this code, you're going to see it's going to print both 5s because it's available everywhere because it's global. Now, maybe you had a very good reason for creating your variable, for initializing it and assigning the value here inside the function. Maybe there's a reason you didn't want to make it globally. And the best reason I can think of is maybe you need to use it globally, but assigning it globally makes your code difficult to read and therefore to debug. So you need to make it a global variable. All you need to do is create it in the first place. So you use the keyword global and then say the variable name. So this makes it says, hey, I'm going to have a variable named x, and I'm going to make it a global variable. So x is equal to 5. It's going to be not local anymore. It's going to be global. And it's going to work in both of these. Just watch. Wow. So that's the way you can create a global variable inside your function. Now, just as a warning, sometimes students try to do this. And notice what that's going to do. It's like, hey, why are you trying to do so many things to me on one line? You can't do that. You've got this function here called add2. It's going to take 2 parameters. It's going to set them equal to answer. And then, well, then it's not going to do anything. So I run it, and it's lovely, but it does nothing. Oh, let me clear that. I run it, and it doesn't do any output. We want it to give me some output here. So I could say print answer up here. Here's the problem. What if I need that variable? What if I need the answer to this? Whatever it's going to pull up, what if I need the answer to use it again in my program? maybe for something fancier than print, maybe for something like to do additional math with, if I was doing some kind of calculus or even more advanced algebra, I might need that. If I wanted to use it, say I was making a game and I had my character's health, and I want to do things with that health, like, are they dead? Are they alive? Do I want the screen to flash red? Do I want whatever? See, if I run this now, it's going to throw a syntax error because answer is not defined, because answer is a local variable. Now, I could just make this global, but that doesn't really solve the problem, because that's just going to bog down. If I have tons and tons of those in my program, it's just going to bog down my memory and create a very confusing bunch of variables that are just everywhere. Instead, I want it to take the answer 1 plus 2, and I want to throw it back onto this line. So I'm going to say I want to print the result. I want to print the result of add 2. 3 plus 5, I'm going to add them together, and I want to print that result. Now the problem is answer is not going to give that to me. I need to bring something back. The way I do that is by doing something called return. So I add the two together. I take the parameters up here. I've got number 1. I've got number 2. Adds it together and... Oh, sorry. That was almost bad. I want it to return the value that comes from adding those two together. And so what it's going to do is it's going to return those. It's going to throw those back down here. Add 2, 3, and 5. Cool. Come up here. Do that. Do that. What am I supposed to do with that value? I'm supposed to return it. It's going to send it back here, and then it's going to print it. And of course, it does it very quickly. But there you see. I've got that 8 there. Now, I could reuse that. I could say, set this equal to the answer. And then I could print the answer. Or I could do anything else with that answer. And again, it's going to give me back that 8. Whatever I send, so I send this up here, send these two values up here as parameters. When I return it, it sends it back this way. One last thing, it's very important. If I was doing a return inside a, well, I have it inside a function, but if I had it inside a loop or something, return also says, hey, that's what you were supposed to do. Stop running. So if I put something else here, because it's going to return this, this will not print. See? It just has the 8. Because that's after the return. Return says stop the function and go back. So I don't want to do that. If I wanted to print something, I'd need to put it up here. And now it is. Now it's accurate. Now it is going to print. And it's going to come back. So return is very powerful, very useful. There you go.